Hey Rishi, welcome to the figure sculpture course. I have your two models up on the screen and I'll quickly go through these and see how they look. I've already kind of had a little look around them and I think to start that they're excellent, right? So you've done quite a good job with them already. Hopefully I can just go through here and just point out a few things to just push them a little bit further. Okay, and I think the major thing for the male torso is to do with the width up through here, across kind of his chest area, right? And a few people have had this trouble, and it might be related to, I don't know, just kind of any number of things. Possibly some of the images in the reference are deceptive, but I think in general people are going a little bit too thin through here. Kind of edge of the chest to edge of the chest. And the way to think about it is that if your guy puts his arms down, probably his chest, as it is right here, is going to be quite a bit taller than it is wide. And we just need probably, yours isn't too far off, but we probably just need about 20% more width through here, and it'll just kind of give a little bit more space in the clavicle and a little bit more space through the shoulder. Let me just see if I can do this with a little mask lasso. Then I'll just kind of brush it off with a little pen. Brush it on through here. And I'll just do a little transpose on it to show you what I'm talking about. It's probably about that much difference, right? And then obviously all this stuff will have to be blended to accommodate. Let me just quickly get something out here. And then a little bit in here. And I'll let you kind of explore this and maybe play with some of the, tweak some of the settings and some of the forms. Also, when you're kind of looking at this, notice in this area, kind of in the abdominal section of the pectoralis major, how really flat it goes. I mean, you can see on this guy, it almost goes all the way down to the rib cage. I mean, we're getting, especially when the arm is so far elevated, it's getting stretched probably near its maximum, right? So all of this volume is going to kind of go stretched and get really thin. And then all of this other stuff is just going to flow over. And like you'll see in this week's exercise, the clavicle kind of rotates back, so all of this kind of goes up high and just kind of starts to thicken up here where it all converges and overlaps its way out. And in this lower section here, kind of the lower half of the front deltoid, you really can't make a distinction between pecs and deltoids anymore. They both kind of snake over the biceps out to the outside of the humerus. Okay, so just a little tuck in there. We're going to start to get really familiar with this guy's abs because he's our model for almost the duration of the course. And he has quite muscular abs. And they're very kind of, they kind of have all the characteristics that we talk about in the anatomy course. Asymmetry, little six-pack above the thoracic arch, all those things. And so really it's worth really investigating closely the shapes and the volumes of these things because we're going to have to sculpt them a couple more times before the course is out. And they are a little bit deceptive just because they're quite developed. But it's all about getting the right kind of interlocking between the sections, right? So just probably, if you had time, a little bit more time on this. I know it was a little bit of a big ask for 1 week. the two torsos. But if you had a little bit of time to refine, you could just go in and really start to observe how these forms interlock and really how they transition into each other. You're not far off, but I just think that maybe there's a few little volume issues and a few little kind of gestures that are a little bit missing. Okay, working our way around. So this guy also has, in addition to crazy abs, he has crazy external obliques, right? So kind of working his way all the way up this line here. I'm not actually sculpting these, but just showing you this big kind of plane here. This is the limit of his external obliques, and they kind of are jagged all the way up. And when he's flexed, they don't necessarily show digits, but almost a flat wall on the side. But when it's a flat wall, that's when you have to be very careful about getting the rib cage underneath correct, right? If you look at this very carefully in this area, you can see a little bit of convexity in this area where the rib cage is pressing out against the tensed external obliques, right? So really it's kind of in here, and I'm just going to go in with a very light standard brush to pop this out. Push this back to normal. So really this is a form underneath the forms of the external obliques, right? And probably if I had to emphasize one thing to everybody in the class, it's to really try to see through the muscles that we're representing to the rib cage underneath. Okay, so I'm just popping that out a tiny bit. So you get a little bit more sense of volume in here, a little bit of fullness down here. And then the other thing that kind of comes along with getting a sense of rib cage in there is you want a sense that all of these muscles are sitting on top of the rib cage, right? And to get their volumes correct as they just go back. And I think that these just pop probably a little bit too much out. Right, they're just resting right on the ribs as they kind of go back. So you have this one on the 6th rib, 7th, 8th rib, and then you can even see the top of one, which is coming through here on the 5th rib. And then above that you have more, but they're kind of quite smooth, right? And those go up to form the upper wall, the inner wall of the armpit. Right in here. Okay, I'm just going to cover up a little bit of this striation. We don't want to see too much of that. We know it's there, but in a pose like this, you wouldn't see it. Okay, and even now, I'm going to tuck this just a tiny bit in because we're getting a little bit too much flare, I think, in here. Just like that, just to kind of keep it under control, keep it constrained to the idea of the rib cage being the driving force. Okay, so you can see where we're going if I just kind of pop the morph target in and out. And the same thing that I did on this shoulder probably needs to be done on this shoulder. I'll just do a quick kind of mask and do a little pull on it. Hopefully I have enough of it there. And what I'm going to pull, actually, it looks like you have a really short spine of the scapula. So when I stretch this out, I'm going to kind of mask halfway over that and mask up through half of the trapezius because that looks pretty short. And then we'll get some of this chest, this outside bit of the pecs going out as well. Okay, so a little move on this. Do something like that, probably. Let's just see what, possibly a little bit better. Yeah, I kind of like that. Okay, okay, now that that's in place, let's just rotate around and see where we were going on the back. I think your back is pretty well observed for the most part. You've got a good sense of the trapezius, good sense of construction in the scapula. One thing that I want you to become familiar with as relates to, well, this guy's anatomy, but also kind of anatomy in general, is the forms of these spinal erectors down here, right? You obviously have captured these going straight up the back, but this kind of lateral mass of spinal erectors sitting out here, you got the bottom of it, but I think you missed the volume of the body going up. And this is going all the way up here, starting to diminish as he gets kind of underneath the trapezius. But it's symmetric on both sides, and actually you cannot miss the egg shape on this side when you look closely. And this is also kind of going up, and again underneath the trapezius, something like that. So just kind of giving a lot of fullness to the lower back. Then you get this sitting over top, both sides. You have a pretty good overlap of forms here. Remember, all the stuff in here is created by the rhomboids going back like this underneath the trapezius, so we're getting a little plane change in the body of the trapezius coming from the rhomboids underneath, right? Okay, other than that, I think this is looking pretty good. Just be very careful not to encroach too much on your acromion. I think you're probably missing a little bit of it here. Your deltoids are going straight into your trapezius. We'll trim that back a little bit, give it a little space. It's sitting right underneath these two skin rolls on this arm. Right, so we just need to plow out some space on that side, and also it's quite a bit more prominent here. You can just see quite plainly the square. It's going to be sitting in there like this. Okay, and you can see, look carefully at how much the deltoids kind of bulge above it. Yours were quite a bit, this is quite a deep depression, but it's a little bit less than that in reality. Okay, just unify some of this. This trapezius going back. Just look for the planes as much as possible in these areas. And in fact, all of this is coming back along the spine of the scapula, which is raised a little bit more than you have it. Okay. Other thing, let's just kind of make a little bit better construction in this, in the kind of the rear head. I think you're probably looking really closely at the shapes in this area, but kind of maybe got a little bit distracted by some of the forms. So in these instances where things are a little bit confusing, do your best to read the forms, but then kind of try to reconcile it with the anatomy that you know. And what we're missing is we're missing kind of the protrusion of the spine of the scapula, right? You have it embedded, but if you just kind of raise it out a little bit, that's what we're seeing right here, is the kind of the raised spine. Right, and then this is kind of inserting into the bottom of it. We just get a flat plane coming off the top. A little bit more like that. Then just make sure that it merges sensibly with the acromion on the outside, and you're in pretty good shape. You can see kind of a little bit of interesting separation in the heads of the deltoid out there. I'm not going to spend the time to model these to perfection, but Just want you to see that. Okay, let's just do a little before after. Didn't change much of your anatomy, just a few little things on proportions. Just put his clavicles back in really, and push the shoulders out a bit. And again on the front, something like that. Okay, let's have a quick look at the female. I'm not going to go into as much detail on this, but I think it looks great. The thing that jumped out at me first when I saw it, and hopefully it's a pretty easy fix, is her arms are too big. Right, she's quite muscular through the arms, but it looks like they were man's arms that were put on her. So I'm just going to try a little reverse inflate to kind of take these in a bit. It's going to ruin your stumps, but hopefully if you just see it like this, you'll get an idea what I'm talking about. So it probably needs maybe 25% less volume through the arms. Okay, so that's them shrunk. Still muscular because she certainly is muscular, but just not big. Yeah, looks good. My only question, and I'm just going to pull up the reference for this. We'll go with week 1 female. My only question is some of the stuff you have going on down here, and I'll just find that in here. Okay, so I'm not sure quite what this form is. That jumps out at me as being a little bit too much, but women, even a very lean woman like she is, very muscular, have a nice unifying fat pad that sits right in here, kind of sitting right over top of what would be the external obliques coming back, right? You have all this coming back, and then it's right in this area above the gluteus muscles. You have fat, and that just really softens these transitions on this side and this side as well. Okay. Anatomically, I think it's all very well observed up here. The only thing that I think maybe lets you down a little bit is this deltoid, and specifically kind of the rear deltoid here. On a raised arm like this, going all the way above the head, remember this distance from insertion all the way back to origin on the spine of the scapula, that's a long ways. So this starts to get stretched, and it goes really, really thin, right? So you're only making out a very kind of shallow convexity on that, and it just needs to be pushed in a little bit, and also some volume out of here. It's a little bit too much. Okay. Great work. I really like this one. It holds together. Maybe put a little bit of softening in here. I know she's quite defined in here, but just needs a tiny touch of skin to just kind of soften that area up. Okay, I think that's it for this little review. Great work on both of these. I hope you see that kind of the main problems were a little bit of constructional problems, not so much anatomic problems. So yeah, great. And I will see how you do next week on the scapulohumeral rhythm exercise, which should be fun. Okay, thanks Rishi. Bye.